Mr. Speaker, it's a very great pleasure to be able to have the opportunity to stand here as the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, to be able to support the budget that was presented on behalf of the government. And in so doing, I would like to pay tribute to all of the hard-working and dedicated people who put this budget in place in record time. And it shows, Mr. Speaker, what good leadership and good collective will can do in setting records. Mr. Speaker, you know that generally a budget would take about 150 days to prepare. The People's Progressive Party was able to have this budget prepared in a matter of about 5 weeks. And so I pay tribute to the team that has been able to put this together. And it's emblematic, Mr. Speaker, of the leadership that you will get from President Ali, Dr. Irfan Ali, and the People's Progressive Party. And allow me respectfully, Mr. Speaker, to be able to congratulate all of the members who have been appointed to this House, and also to be able to congratulate you, Mr. Speaker. And I join with all members on both sides of the House in being able to commiserate and express my condolences to the families of Isaiah and Joel, Henry and Paresh Singh. And our prayers remain with them. And as the Minister of Youth, I stand here also to say that it is a national disgrace for anyone in this country and anyone in this House to use the deaths of those teens, those 3 teens, for cheap political points, to stoke and inflame racial hostility in this country, and in the process to see innocent people get hurt, properties, private and public property, get damaged in the process, and create the hostility amongst people and villages that potentially can resonate. And I want everyone in the country to know that young people are not tools to be used for cheap political points. And on behalf of all of the young people in this country, I say that we don't buy in to the race rhetoric. And the race inflammatory situation is going to end with our generation. And we will never allow anyone, regardless of who they are, destroy our country, because it is we that have to inherit this place. Mr. Speaker, this is not an ordinary budget. As you know, it's not an ordinary budget because most times when you are examining budgets, you examine a budget from the position of 1 year relative to the year that it's coming in. The last budget that we had here was in 2018 in November. But more importantly, the reason why it's not an ordinary budget is because the government has changed hands. And as a result of the government changing hands, it is important for us to be able to examine the leadership of the government relative to the position that they had taken and inherited the government and to where they've left off. So I would like to be able to just do a transposition of where we are now and where we were then, and to compare and contrast what is the record. So in doing so, I'd like to establish some facts. The first important fact that I would like to establish is that in the last 5 years, the APNU AFC government have spent over $1.4 trillion with nothing substantial to show for it. $1.4 trillion of our money with nothing substantial to show for it. And since we are examining records, I want everyone to know, both in this house and all across Guyana, to know that in the entire 23 years of government under the People's Progressive Party, if you were to add up all of the budgets, the People's Progressive Party never spent $1.4 trillion. But in the 5 years that the APNU AFC has been in power, they have spent over $1.4 trillion, and they have nothing to show for it. Meanwhile, under the People's Progressive Party, we've spent less in those 23 years, and we've had roads, bridges, airports, schools, hospitals, health centers, canals, sea defenses, stadiums, aquatic centers, community centers, 5-star hotels, housing schemes, over 100,000 house lots. So the question is, where has the money gone in the $1.4 trillion that has been spent on behalf of the APNU AFC? The second fact that I would like to establish is that the APNU AFC has left the country in a financial hole. And many times you can look at the estimates, but you've got to go to the Bank of Guyana figures to be able to really get a good understanding of the overall health of the financial system and the macroeconomic position. When the PPP left office in 2015, we left over $10 billion in the central bank. Right now, there is an overdraft, which is a deficit of over $92 billion. That is a swing of over $100 billion. Where has the money gone? When we left office, there was close to $20 billion in our gold reserve sitting in the central bank. Right now, it's under 500 million Guyana dollars. Where has the money gone? The third point is, our total stock of external debt is higher now than when we left in 2015. The fourth point is that we now have to run a larger fiscal deficit. We have to run a larger fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP as a result of the poor financial management of the APNU AFC. And I heard one of the young members mention trading economics, but the trading economics just is able to take those Bank of Guyana figures and puts it into an easy to accessible version on the website. Go and have a look at your current account deficit. Your current account deficit when we left office, your current account deficit is a record, just like your balance of payments, your balance of payments, your record, your financial transactions with the world. Your current account deficit, which is the most important trading record with the world, shows that when we left office, it was about $400 million in deficit. Now it's about $1.8 billion in a deficit. The third thing that I would like to give a good assessment of the financial health of the country relative to when the People's Progressive Party left it. It was,
let's have some order.
You have to be able to examine your export earnings of your productive sectors. So in 2014, when we left office, 2015, the productive sectors, if you compare 2014 into 2015 to where it is in 2019, sugar is down 68%, rice is down 11%, timber is down 37%, diamond is down 20%. The only sector that is propping the productive sectors up is gold. And the only reason that is happening is because of the big investments that were made by the People's Progressive Party. If you were to extract gold from the equation of your export earnings, the entire productive sectors, their export earnings are down 15%. So if you are really to examine who has had better financial management of the country and where the country is in terms of its financial health, it is the People's Progressive Party that has succeeded. And I heard from the other side, I heard one of the members mention the word democracy. Mr. Speaker, the APNU AFC should never ever mention the word democracy. Unless the preceding words to the word democracy is, we do not believe and support democracy. And I was particularly surprised to the young honorable member who mentioned the word democracy, particularly surprised. And I won't call her name and I won't call any of the young members' names here because I know that they have a future. And as the minister responsible for youth, they fall under my care and responsibility too. And I know that they're not getting the good leadership on the other side, but they can get the good leadership from this side. I was particularly surprised when the young honorable member had mentioned the word democracy, because it is the leader of the WPA who had said that we should burn the ballot boxes. Burn the ballot boxes. And I want all the members of the other side to know. I want all of the members of the other side to know that all of what you are saying now, it really does not matter because you have lost the election. I have no idea why you are trying to sing praises about your record. The proof of the pudding is in the eating. And the election happened on March 2nd. And the people have determined that the pudding that you were cooking, they don't want it. But none of what you say is going to have any traction or any credibility whatsoever, because this country witnessed before their very eyes what you did. And up to today, there has not been an apology, an admission of what was done. And that's why nothing that will be said from the other side is going to have any relevance or traction with the members of the public. You can say to me whatever you want. You can say to this side whatever you want. But let me tell you something. The only people that will be the true judge and that really matter are the people who we took an oath to serve. And I would like to take the opportunity, since we are on the subject, to congratulate all of the people who, both nationally and internationally, who supported our defense of our democracy and the preservation of our Constitution. And why is this important? Why was it important in the first place? The empirical fact is that countries that are democratic and that uphold the rule of law have the proven pathway for a better life for their citizens. That is the empirical fact. The economic policies that you would like to discuss and that we are discussing, the fundamental basis of an improved life for everyone is having a democracy. And you don't have to go very far to look at it, to find out whether that's true or not. Our very own history with what is our record, our economic growth, is proof of that. Maybe about 1940 to about the early 1970s or the mid 1970s, Guyana was one of the most prosperous countries in the region. And because of the rigging of elections and the dictatorship that took a stranglehold of our country, Guyana turned to the poorest country in the Western Hemisphere. Nonetheless, the APNU-AFC, despite this fact, was prepared to take all of Guyana there to see the entire country become isolated. And I have to tell you that some people are still so upset about the fact that they did not succeed on rigging the election. Some of them are so upset from members of the other side that they are discussing amongst themselves, and they believe that this is a legitimate conversation to have, that Guyana must be split up, where one group of people must go in one area and another group of people must go in another area. But I want you to know that just like the People's Progressive Party and the people of Guyana stopped you from rigging this election, we will stop you from dividing this country and splitting this country up. And for the people who are still upset about it, there's an easy solution for that, you know. There's an easy solution for that. You can buy a plane ticket and you can go, but you need a visa for that, right? Sorry. And I heard one of the honorable members on the other side speak about youth and the youth budget. Young people were, hold on, one of the honorable members of the other side, or a couple of the other members on the other side, mentioned the youth budget and young people. Young people were betrayed and neglected by the APNU-AFC. Over 60% of this country represents young people. And before they came into office, they campaigned on young people. They promised that young people would occupy positions of authority in the cabinet and the parliament and ministers. And when David Granger became president and the APNU-AFC got into government, not a single young person was appointed to the cabinet. Not a single young person was appointed a minister. Not a single young person was appointed to the parliament. And why does that matter? Why? I'm not finished with them yet. Why does that matter? In this country, democratic and political power is held in the president, the parliament, and the cabinet. That's what Article 50 says of the Constitution. All of the decisions that are made on behalf of people are made in those organs. And it's when you have the young representation at the level of decision making, that is how those decisions are tailored to affect their interest. And that is why you would have seen the following. But it never made sense to me that why is it that when they campaigned for this young people and having young people in leadership, they promised that this would happen. It never made sense to me that young members like Christopher Jones and James Bond and Figueroa, young people were left out in the cold from these executive decision making. And then I heard from Winston Jordan. Winston Jordan in his 2016 budget presentation said that young people are not ready for leadership. Young people are not ready for leadership. That's what he said. And when I heard the criticism about the budget for the youth, sports and culture, I would like German, the Honorable Member German, to hear what were the figures for 2015 from the APNU AFC. It was 2.4 billion. For 2016, it was 2.3 billion. 2017, it was 2.6 billion. The point that I'm making is that none of your encouragements and advocacy came when you were sitting in the seat in the government. None, not a single word was made. What was the result of the absence of young leadership in this country? The $10,000 cash grant was taken away from people. And they called it a political gimmick for all the young moms and the moms who had young kids, whether they have 5 kids or 4 kids or 3 kids. Ask them if they thought it was a political gimmick. VAT was added on education. University tuition fees went up by 35%. Young people got very few house lots. The 2 a.m. curfew was added. VAT was added on data, electricity, and water. And then there was no jobs for young people. No jobs for young people. And when David Granger was asked about the jobs for young people, he said that it is not the job of the government to be able to create jobs, and that they must go and sell plantain chips, and they must go and cook up and pepper sauce. So let me tell you what the People's Progressive Party is going to be doing for young people in this country. We are returning the $10,000 cash grant and increasing it to $15,000. We're going to double the uniform voucher. We're going to have the $25,000 COVID relief for all families. The removal of VAT from electricity and water. The removal of VAT from cell phones. Education will get $52 billion in this country. We're removing corporate tax from private education, removing corporate tax from healthcare, removing VAT from medical supplies. There will be 20,000 online scholarships. There will be 50,000 house lots. The removal of VAT from all of the building and construction materials so young people can build their own homes. We're going to see the decrease in interest rates in this country. There's the increase of the tax relief from 8 million to 10 million on low income loans. The mortgage relief, which has been returned to $30 million. The APNU AFC took it down to $15 million. And to the young member who said that, the honorable member on the other side who said that we were being disingenuous by saying that it was a $2.8 billion budget. There is a new ministry that was created. And because there's a new ministry, those program heads have already had allocation or had already spent money. So that money has to be accounted for in this budget as the law requires. So out of the $2.8 billion, the allocation that you see is $1.2 billion, but that is for the remaining 3 months. The rest of the money for the $2.8 billion is in the budget, but it has to be accounted for. And if you're talking about capital projects, Mr. Figueroa, you have to know that there is a procurement process. Ministry of
Honorable
Finance
Member
will
Figueroa,
not give
not
you...
Mr. Figueroa. Honorable Member Figueroa.
Honorable Member Mr. Figueroa, there's a procurement process. The People's Progressive Party brought in the Procurement Act. And as a result of that, the Ministry of Finance will never give you money which cannot be spent before the end of the year. We are now in an emergency budget situation. So the money can only be spent by the end of the year, which is 3 months. So I prepared a little note for you. I know it's not your fault that you don't know and that you don't understand it. You have bad leadership who is not teaching you on the other side. And as it relates to the ministry, I would like to give an update of what's happening at the ministry. David Granger and the APNU AFC relegated the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, which was created by President Janet Jagan in 1998, relegated it to departments within ministries. First, it was relegated to a department within the Ministry of Education. This was a complete failure. Then it was relegated to a department within the Ministry of the Presidency, which was headed by George Norton. These two ministers, as a result of they had two ministers in 5 years. One minister wanted to be the Minister of Health, and the other minister felt his position was a demotion to have the responsibility for youth, sports, and culture. And I would like everyone to know that I consider the Ministry of Culture, Youth, and Sports to be the most important ministry in this country and spans all of the areas in this country. And if you were to add all of the budget allocation that goes to young people, it is this ministry and the advocations that are being made on our behalf, the advocacy points, that is where the largest money is being spent on. When I got to the ministry, our page, which is the Youth, Sports and Culture Ministry, imagine young people communicate through social media. Our Facebook page had 6,000 likes. Within 1 month, it has now increased to 10,000 likes. It had no Instagram account, no LinkedIn page. And when I met with the ministry, I said to them that we have one mission: to develop and showcase young Guyanese talent. That's not true. And then and I want everyone to know as well, other than the social cohesion department, I have over 400 persons working at my ministry. And guess what? I have only fired 2 persons. And one of them, I haven't fired. There have been only 2 persons whose services have been terminated. And one of them is already gainfully employed, and he's the chief whip. The Social Cohesion Department. Social Cohesion Department is just like everything else we've had in this country from David Granger. David Granger said that he came up with this plan called the Social Cohesion Department. And that he had this plan and that it was in his back pocket. The problem is that his pants never had any pockets. So the plan never existed. When I checked to see where were the allocations for social cohesion, 2015 there was no allocations for social cohesion. 2016 there was no allocations for social cohesion. And the minister who was appointed in 2015 is one of the most divisive political figures in this country. How can you heal the country in having one of the most divisive political figures in the country? And then out of the funding that was received in 2017, of the $88 million that was received in 2017, about $58 million of that was spent on admin. So no money was actually spent on social cohesion. And as one of the members have spoken about President Granger's legacy, I would like to speak about President Granger's legacy. Because since you spoke about his legacy, I'm going to mention it. The President Granger legacy is and will forever be the leader of the PNC who lost in 5 years what the PNC took 23 years to get back. And the margin wasn't slim. It was 25,000 votes combined. 6 out of 10 regions. It's the first president in Guyana to have a court rule that he's breached the Constitution. The first president of Guyana to lose a no-confidence motion. The first president in Guyana to fire 7,000 sugar workers. The first president in Guyana to have 30,000 jobs lost under his watch. The first president in Guyana to give away $55 billion $55 billion US dollars in one deal. The first president in Guyana to have 3 press conferences in 5 years. The first president in Guyana to not give up power in 5 months after losing an election. The first president in Guyana to practice social distancing before we had COVID. The first president to practice social distancing before we had COVID. Even his own ministers could not get in touch with him.
Honorable Minister, I don't want to social distance from you, so please ask someone to provide you with 5 more minutes to conclude your presentation.
Mr. Speaker, I have the pleasure of asking for 5 more minutes for my colleague, and we are social distancing. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, you have 5 minutes to continue and conclude your presentation.
And there's one other thing that he will enjoy the record of for the rest of his life. He's the first president in Guyana that if you go and type in rigging president, a picture in Google Images, a picture of David Granger comes up. A picture of David Granger comes up. Go into Google Images right now and type in rigging president, and pictures of David Granger will come up. Mr. Speaker, I would like to deal with culture. Since the honourable member had mentioned culture, I would like him to know that, of course, culture is important. Culture is, of course, the fabric that gives a people its identity. The APNU-AFC's version of culture, instead of him having to go and look to Jamaica as an example, why didn't he look to any of the ministers who had responsibility of the APNU-AFC for culture? You don't have to go and use examples from another country to set a precedent. Why didn't you cite what was done by colleagues on your other side? Your version of culture is to buy $50 million worth of Buju Banton tickets and to have Buju Banton come to Guyana and big up Roger Khan. It's not an easy road. I want you to know as well that even though we are in the COVID pandemic, I'm happy to announce that as it relates to culture, that we are going to be proceeding with on the safe guidelines and virtual and broadcasted features. The dance festival, the drama festival, the song festival, and on the 27th of this month, we're going to be having the Amerindian exhibition, so you can look forward to that, Mr. Henry. We're also going to be having the One Guyana concert, as well as we're going to be doing the launch of MASH. And I'm also happy to be able to announce as well, as you know, as you mentioned, the Honourable Member, Mr. Figueira, our budget allocation is likely to double as a result of the 3 multi-purpose facilities, and maybe even triple. It maybe even will triple as a result of those facilities. Those facilities are going to be international facilities. They're going to be world-class, and we are currently preparing the concept notes. We're currently preparing the proposals. So once that's done, we should be able to get the allocations for the next budget. one thing that I would like to be able to announce, I know that I'm running out of time, one thing that I would like to be able to speak about as it relates to sport, because we have a very exciting sports program. But there is an issue that I have to bring to the House's attention, and that is in relation to cricket. As an irregular situation had occurred, where in 2014 the cricket bill was passed with the support of both sides of the House. The APNU had supported the PPP because it was in a minority government situation at that time. So it had the support of both sides of the House. Lo and behold, that there was a challenge to that cricket bill. And shortly, a few years after that challenge, at the Court of Appeal, the Minister of Culture, Youth and Sport, the minister who had responsibility for culture, youth and sports, went to the Court of Appeal along with the Attorney General and consented to the provisions being suspended in that act. And the lawyer who they consented to for the suspension of the act that they agreed with and on its passage is none other than Roysdale Ford. They cooked up a book.
Mr. Speaker, I stand on the standing order. 4-1. The first thing, Mr. Speaker, is that I'm a member of this honorable House, and I would ask the honorable member to refer to me. And secondly, Mr. Speaker, in relation to what was said, it is factually incorrect. No consent could be made to an attorney at law. Thank you very much.
Honorable Member Mr. Ford, when you stand in a point of order, you ought to give the Speaker a chance to rule that you can continue. That's first. And secondly, you can only proceed on a point of elucidation, i.e. correction, if the current member speaking gives way to you. I note the first point of order you raised, and I ask the honorable member to refer to members as honorable and honorable Mr. Thank you very much.
Yes, my apologies, my unreserved apologies to the honorable member, Mr. Ford. He will have an opportunity to respond to this, but I would like him as well as the public to know is that through the Attorney General that a motion has been filed, and we will be having the Cricket Administration Act be restored to its original condition, where to be fully enforced, but in a matter of days.
And honorable member, to stick within the time frame, can you please conclude?
Yes, Mr. Speaker. I would like to conclude by. I've heard a number of statements being made on the other side about persons who, about their electoral prospects and their political prospects. And I would like you to know that it is the same leadership that said to you that you would have won the no confidence motion. It is the same leadership that said to you that 33 was not a majority of 65. It is the same leadership that said to you that the People's Progressive Party wasn't going back into office. It's the same leadership that said to you that they were going back into office. It is the same leadership that said to you that the ballot boxes, when you open the ballot boxes, that it would confirm Mingo's declaration. It was the same leadership that said to you that Lowenfield's numbers must be used. It is the same leadership that said to you that they were going to be back in office. After all of that, which is what they said, you are still going to stand here and say that you're going to be back in government soon? It defies belief. And let me say something else. The same persons who lost all of those cases on behalf of the other side, they are the persons who are fighting that petition. And do you know that we have a petition that's pending since 2015? And I would like to put a challenge to the members of the other side, especially the young members who are parroting that you're going to be back in office. Ask your leadership to show you your statements of polls. Ask your leadership to show you your statements of polls. They will never show you their statements of polls. If they really want to show you that you should believe them, ask them to show you the statements of polls. And I want you to have a very good look at the members of this side of the House when you speak about going back into office. This is the same crew that put you out of office in the first place. And we have legions and legions of people that are waiting in the wings. So when you think about going back into the office, just keep remembering that you were running the government at that point in time. You had control of the parliament, the executive, the cabinet, the police, the army, the GCOM secretariat, and we still put you out of office. And we told you that we were coming for power. And never, ever in this country will the people believe you again and trust you again. It will be a long time that you will be in the opposition. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.